Welcome to another Dragonlance review episode. It is Misham Dark Ember the 6th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Dragons, World of Fire by R.A. Salvatore, Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, Keith Baker, and Scott McGough. I'd like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. Links in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate links. Now, this is my perspective only, and if you have thoughts or disagree with mine, I invite you to share them in YouTube chat. If you happen to be watching live, throw them in the comments, and after I'm done, we can sort of riff a little bit about the stories or the settings or whatever you'd like. Now, I am multi-streaming this on Twitch as well. If you are into Twitch as a platform, you can definitely connect with me there. And then, of course, this book, if you're buying it aftermarket, because it's not for sale, it's not in print anymore, it is incredibly expensive. It's like over $70. So the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to just use the Internet Archive. You can set up a very free account so that you can borrow books from their archive. And that's how I read this, is I just borrowed the book, read it. It's a pretty quick read. It's only like 160 some odd pages, but it's a larger book. So it's closer to like 200 or so pages. So in any case, it's, not the biggest book out there. So I don't understand the price, especially after having read the stories in it. It doesn't really justify the price. So in any case, hey Chris, how you doing? Speaking of Afire, this channel is Afire. All the extra content's been sweet. Yeah, I've been burning through some stuff lately. So let's get into this review. Now this is pre-written. This is they call them novellas, but they're really just short stories. Novellas traditionally are slightly shorter than a novel, and neither of these 4 stories are anywhere close to a novel in size. So I would never consider any of them a novella. So they're just short stories. But there's only 4 of them, which is, again, why I don't think the price of entry is worth it if you buy this collection. So the first of the 4 stories is called If Ever They Happened Upon My Lair by R.A. Salvatore. I do not have a history with R.A. Salvatore. I think, I don't know that he has ever written a Star Wars novel. Now I'm thinking about it. It was Terry Brooks that wrote a Star Wars novel that I learned about. In any case, I read Star Wars books. I don't think I've ever read R.A. Salvatore before, and I know he's written for Forgotten Realms, and he made the Forgotten Realms famous with his Drizzt Do'Urden character, and certainly some of my real-life friends when I was coming up playing D&D every day with them and stuff, they were obsessed with R.A. Salvatore and Drizzt, and they made tons of characters after them, and I started playing DMing in Forgotten Realms just so that they could sort of scratch that itch. But I never really got into it myself. It was never something that I was interested in, so I never really drank the Kool-Aid with him. I will say, after having read all 4 of these stories, his is probably the strongest. So, this story is set in the Forgotten Realms. As I am mostly unfamiliar with it, I was unsure if I had any special connection with other stories. It certainly reads as if it's the bad guy's side of a greater story. It's centered around the Witch Queen of Vasa, Zengi, a lich. He is battling for control of the Bloodstone lands and is using the dragons in the area, promising them unlife as Dracoliches when they die, if they assist him. He's already enlisted the White Dragon Bifast, the Red Dragon Honoring Gast, and countless other worms, though they don't always seem happy about working with the Lich. A black dragon named Ursula attacked a nearby town to his lair and drew the attention of Zengi. He approached the dragon and offered it the opportunity to join him, but he was rejected. Then the battle against Gareth Dragonsbane began to turn against the Lich. He sent Bifast against them, but she couldn't defeat them, and eventually lured them to Ursula's lair, where they went in and attacked the Black Dragon. They were doing it great harm when Zengi intervened, destroying their wizards. But that did not deter the Knights of the Order. They fought on, and as though they were all but wiped out, in Ursula's last moments of life, he called out to the Lich and accepted the Lich's offer, allowing his soul to be pulled into the dragon's phylactery. After the war was won by the Knights of the Order, Bifast approached Zheng Yi to report the sad state of affairs. The Lich replied that he was patient, and he will wait for the right time to resume his conquest. He places Ursula's phylactery in a magical tome, knowing some adventurer would discover it and unleash the Draco Lich, and the war would continue on. It was an interesting story and well written. I imagine if I knew more about the campaign's setting, it would have been even better with the connection to other stories, and it did very much read as if it was one side of a greater sort of multi-novel saga. As you know, like in Dragonlance, for example, this would have been maybe Verminard's short story about him attacking the different areas as the Dragon Army commander, and then his defeat and his sort of reaction to that defeat. Or maybe like Erican or something like that. But that's the vibe I got. If any of you out there know anything about Forgotten Realms, please let me know, because I think it would be interesting to learn more about like the Knights of the Order, or Sir Bevel, or Gareth Dragonsbane, a paladin, and all these name drops which sort of teased extra lore information. I just never really knew anything about it. So you've always been extremely jealous of Forgotten Realms. You never thought it had the innovations of Dragonlance. Oh, it definitely didn't have the innovations of Dragonlance. And its creator just sort of pitched it, and it was sort of like pulled into TSR, and then TSR just went crazy adding all sorts of stuff to it. And so for me, from the outside looking in, it just looks like a melting pot rather than an informed, interesting setting. It really just seems like this massive melting pot of like Greyhawk used to be, you know, like the default campaign setting that anyone can do anything in, and it doesn't really matter, and there's nothing that really affects anything else. I don't think that's probably true, but that's the vibe I get from it since I've been playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So I was always a little pissed that it got so much attention because it seemed so bland, but what are you going to do? The second story is the Dragonlance story, the sole reason why I read this collection. So Here Be Dragons, A Kender Tale by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. Oh, I'm really disappointed by this story. Well, perhaps not the story as much as this story in this collection of stories. It's about Tasselhoff Burfoot, who comes across a town called Pigeon Falls. Curious, as all Kender are, he observes the town from the outside and decides to try to enter it, but is rejected due to being a Kender, and that there are no Kender allowed in Pigeon Falls. All Taz wants to do is see the falling pigeons that the town is named after, so he tries to sneak in a hay-filled wagon. The guard finds him and kicks him out again. Next, Taz goes to the river and opens the grate to the pipes that funnel water out of the city. Once inside the city through those gates, he rummages around but is discovered and is run out of town. Seemingly undeterred, he wanders around the outskirts of the walled city and discovers a sign that says, "Here be dragons." He continues on and finds an old cave. It has lanterns all around the outside. So he takes one of the lanterns and he enters the cave. He discovers a blue dragon's lair, but the blue dragon is suspended in the air like a statue, and the warriors round the floor are all dead and bones. Taz finds a dead wizard with a glowing staff and picks it up. This frees the blue dragon, who then has amnesia. He asks Taz if he knows who he is, and Taz says, "Yes, you're George. We are thieves, and we work together." Taz says his name is Igor, and with the confused dragon acting wounded, Taz says that he will go get a poultice to help him. He goes back to the city and falls asleep in the inn, but wakes in the middle of the night with screams of "Dragons!" The blue dragon has tried to sneak into the town and find Taz, who never returned. Taz tells him that he's sorry, but he fell asleep, and the city starts attacking the dragon, hitting it in the head with a catapult. This knocks the memory back into the dragon, who is named Thunderbolt. He rewards Taz with a necklace for saving him and leaves the town, destroying the signs that say, "Here be dragons." The town celebrates Taz as a hero for getting rid of the dragon and puts up a sign that says, "Kender welcome." Look, it was a silly and fun story, but when it's followed by a gritty fantasy story when when it follows a gritty fantasy story like the previous one, it feels childish and ridiculous. It's also one of the shortest short stories in this 4-story collection, which just begs the question, why the hell did they choose this story to add to this collection? And look, this collection is 4 stories, each of them set in a different campaign setting. So it could be seen very much as an introduction to the campaign setting by someone who may not be aware of it. It's actually set as the 4 most popular Dungeons & Dragons campaign settings, each sharing a story about the setting. But this is the weakest of all of the stories. It has the least amount of words in it, the least amount of action in it, the least amount of interest and intrigue in it, and it's the tightest, most contained, boring-ass story of the entire collection, and it just so happens to be my favorite campaign setting. So if you're going to be writing a story that's going to be going in a collective tome for all people to read who may not be aware or may not play in Dragonlance, why would you write such a boring-ass story and put it in there? This isn't even worthy, in my opinion, of being one of the short stories in one of the Dragonlance anthology stories. It's very much a story you would find in like a Dragon magazine, and you would be like, oh, okay, that's interesting, and just move on about your life. But it is not a story that is worthy of showcasing to anyone, anywhere, as a first introduction to Dragonlance. This is a gritty, war-torn campaign setting, and you're giving us a dragon who is not threatening at all, a Kender who is just slapsticky silly, like the most tongue-in-cheek silliness that Tracy Hickman can crank out, and there's no stakes. There's just nothing to it. There's no meat to the story at all. I'm so disappointed by this entire collection just because of this one Dragonlance story that's featured in it. And I feel like I've wasted hours of my life reading this stupid book based on this one story. Such a waste. Hey, Shalaf, how you doing, man? Let's see. This is so funny. I love these. Someone stole your collector's edition of Drizzt books from R.A. Salvatore, probably your brother. That sucks. I'm sorry, Shalafi. The Dragonlance story is much more enjoyable, picturing Taz telling it to Flint at the end of the last tome while Flint drinks himself into oblivion. I guess I still really don't like this story. I think it's just... this reeks of Tracy Hickman just trying to be silly. That's it. Just a silly, stupid story. And look, I like Tracy Hickman being silly when it's meant to cut the tension of a serious situation. That's when you get Fizban making cracking jokes, or that's when you get Tasselhoff Burfoot cracking jokes. But when the entire story is just slapsticky silly, I'm not interested. It's just too much of a bad thing. Context affects enjoyment. A TV show episode that's weak in a season of 26 episodes is much more acceptable than a season of 8 episodes. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Tales short stories are pretty good. I love the Tales. I mean, I've been reading all of the anthologies. I only have 2 anthologies left. That's 6 books. And then I'm done with all of the anthologies, except for the 2 best of Tales anthologies, which I won't read because I've already read all of the other ones, which would then, of course, just be rehashing stories I've already read and reviewed. So I don't know, so bummed. I was so bummed when I read this story. All right, the third story is called Principles of Fire by Keith Baker. And of course, this is set in Keith Baker's own campaign setting of Eberron, a setting that I know nothing about. And so this was initially a very hard read for me because I didn't know anything about it. I feel woefully unprepared to recount this story, even as I'm writing it and reading it. I know nothing about Eberron, and reading this makes me feel like I know less than that. The story starts with a massive dragon attacking an airship. Tolar, an old man, is rescued from the airship by Zaire, a female shifter. The dragon is killed in the explosion, and the two go about to discover where the dragon came from and why it attacked the ship. They determine that it was in the guise of a human prior to changing into a dragon, already aboard the airship. They're hired by Lady Solia Lirandar, I don't know how you pronounce these names, to discover the truth, and they meet with her nephew, Lord Dantian, in his home. His seneschal, Kestel Haladan, meets them and brings them to Dantian, who clearly doesn't want them there and is overtly hostile to them. They remind him that this is his aunt who hired them, and they discover that one passenger is not listed in all manifests. Adalia Lantane from Moorgrave University. She must have been the dragon. They continue their investigation, coming across fire creatures who want to stop them and defeating them, only to be defeated by some fire elemental blast. The investigation led on to Stormwind Keep, where Tolar insists he go alone, but Zaire snuck in after him. They discovered dead bodies, and Haladan revealed himself as the murderer, insisting that he would kill both of them. He reveals himself to be a demon and the source of the conflict between the houses of Tharask and Delirandar. As Zaire faces off against the demon Haladan, Tolar turns into his true form, a dragon, and defeats the demon. After bringing him to Dantian and forcing a confession, Zaire woke to realize she was knocked out by the dragon, who had confessed that they are protecting the mortals and houses from the demons, and then wiped her memory. But her memory returned in the end. It was an interesting steampunk-like fantasy detective story, which actually interested me in the setting. It also is the largest of the novellas, I think, and makes me think the DL story was had more to live up to compared to these other stories. I didn't write that last line very well when I was writing it. The story of Eberron creation is more enjoyable than the setting itself. A guy who won a WotC writing contest in 2002 ended up creating an entire D&D setting. Yeah, and look, like, I don't know anything about the airships or the world. It seems very steampunky to me, which is fun. Like, I like steampunk. I mean, not enough to, like, dress up like it and, you know, live my life like it, like a lot of people do, but it's fun and interesting. I don't even really think I would be interested in playing or DMing the campaign setting, to be 100% honest, but as far as a story setting is concerned, it was interesting enough. It kind of reminded me of I don't know if you guys ever watched the cartoon Avatar. Well, there's a sequel cartoon called The Legend of Korra, which is all steampunk based, and it reminded me of that. It also gave me a little bit of a hint of, I know people are going to freak out about this, Blade Runner. Like, it kind of made me think of, because Blade Runner is always about a detective going to detect, you know, truth, but it's set in like a post-apocalyptic film noir sort of environment and vibe. And I got a little bit of that with this story. And so it was actually one of, like, this and the R.A. Salvatore story, I think, are by far the best two stories in this entire collection. I still think I'm leaning towards Salvatore's because it's all based from a bad guy perspective, and I like bad guys, but what are you going to do? All right, so in any case, it was a fun story. The last story, which I literally just finished, is called Unnatural Predator by Scott McGough. Now, this is set in Magic the Gathering universe, which I did not know had its own universe. I don't know anything about Magic the Gathering, except that it's a card game, and I don't give a damn about card games, except for, you know, playing Phase 10 or Gin Rummy with my family. So I've never been interested in looking into Magic the Gathering, and after reading this, I'm not sure I am anymore, but I still enjoyed the story for what it was. This final story is interesting now that it's over, but I was itching for it to end throughout reading it. It's based around a pixie named Van, who is a slave to a dragon. He's geased into service, so he cannot overtly go against his master, but he's worked in secret assembling a team to kill the dragon for him, thus setting him free. It's revealed throughout the story that the dragon Zumaki of the Bottomless Pool has many of the pixies around him, but the pixies have all been killed except for Van. The team consists of a potion master, Donner Russ, his apprentice, Tanya Case, an anchorite named Kula, Captain Alav Hask, his soldiers, and his stone golem, Boom. They all head out to kill the dragon together, and the potion master decides to choose life and puts everyone to sleep, then brings his apprentice to the dragon's entrance. He tells her to run in and grab scales or teeth or anything she can safely find, and they will leave and become wealthy by selling them, not to fight the dragon. Tanya enters only to be discovered and the dragon attacks as she flees. He breaks the entrance apart and it kills Donner. She's forced by the pixie to return to the group, who force her to take them to the dragon. After the battle, the dragon has no skin and is revealed that he's a mechanical dragon. This changes their tactics, but they still try to kill it. It's then revealed the mechanical dragon can heal itself and thus needs to be slain all at once, meaning that which powers it and its body. After the fight is going south, Captain Hask draws his special artifact, a sword called the Hand of Righteous Retribution. It's believed only to be drawn twice. When he draws it to destroy the dragon, Tanya is knocked unconscious and presented to the dying pixie on presented by the dying pixie how to kill the dragon. She has to wield the sword and in one swoop kill the dragon and its bones. The dragon was once the dragon Zumaki, but it battled with a living engine of destruction called Fakmalwa, which took it over. It was also testing on the pixies, which is why only Van survived. His death is weakening the geese, which is why he can share this information. Tanya wakes, takes the sword, and defeats the beast. She passes out from the blast and wakes up as she and the other survivors are leaving the mountain. Then it's revealed that Van and the dragon survived, and Van will have to find more adventures to destroy this dragon. It was a good story, but really long, and I know nothing about the world of Magic the Gathering, so I wasn't familiar with the classes, locations, or races. It made the whole story awkward as I was just not invested at all. But awkward as it was still better than the Dragonlance story, and it was okay. So, if you are a Dragonlance completionist, you should read this anthology, just for the Weis and Hickman story, though it is underwhelming. If you're just a fantasy fan, I would say skip this one. There are only 4 stories, and none of them are amazing enough to justify the aftermarket purchase price of over $70. If you want to read it digitally, it is free on the Internet Archive, so maybe that is the best way to go. All right, so you can only imagine if Salvatore and Chris Pearson were hired to write all the non-Weis Hickman Dragonlance novels, just how epic they would have been. More popular than Game of Thrones, maybe. I don't think it would have been more popular than Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones is gritty and realistic, whereas, realistic as far as fantasy goes. Dragonlance has always had much more high fantasy to it than gritty realism. So I just think that's the tone that when Game of Thrones was coming out, that people were sort of liking and enjoying. And then the HBO series, the first few seasons of it, just drew everyone in and made it even more exponentially popular. So if we get a gritty, realistic Dragonlance TV series someday, I think it'll drag in a lot more people and it'll become more popular than Game of Thrones because I think it is a better world setting. But we need that hook to pull people in. And unfortunately, we live in the era of video. And so we need a video, some sort of film or TV series, preferably TV series in my opinion, not a cartoon, in order to draw in the largest amount of potential viewers and interest of non-campaign and D&D people. But I do think that they would write infinitely better novels than the vast majority of the other awful authors who have written for Dragonlance. Mechanical Dragons always give you warm nostalgia for Taz operating the speaker in the Dragons of Autumn Twilight and falling in love with the setting as a young lad. I didn't really see that as a mechanical dragon. It couldn't really move. It could just flap wings. It was more like a statue with a couple moving parts. Whereas this was literally like a biomechanical anthropomorphic dragon. And so I didn't connect the two at all. I like that you did, but I definitely didn't. But yeah, I like that aspect of, I always loved the sort of gnomish contraption aspect of Dragonlance and how it always fails, but they still sometimes fail spectacularly. And they're always interesting and it's always kind of fun. And so that's where I think we get the closest connection to this. There's that Mount Nevermind story where chaos infuses Mount Nevermind and starts making all the contraptions work. And then they start to kind of take over and they have to fight against them. That story is more like this Magic the Gathering story, which I find really interesting. And it would actually, if it was written better, make a better story, in my opinion. But I don't think that novel was written particularly well. And every single gnome didn't really feel like gnomes to me at all. And so it completely kind of changed. But I did like the idea of it, the premise behind it. So I think if it would have been written better, then it would have been an infinitely better story than this Magic the Gathering one. In any case, that's this anthology. 4 stories they call novellas, which are really just short stories. And none of them, I think, are worth the price of the book itself. But definitely, if you want to read some good fantasy, the Eberron story and the Forgotten Realms story are pretty good. So check those out for sure. You can, and here's what I like about reading all of these different types of stories, all the anthologies and novels and all the other stuff that's non-Dragonlance that I read. Not only does it actually help your brain, and I know how that sounds as if it doesn't because I'm an idiot who says words and phrases like helps your brain, but it actually helps your cognitive ability, your communication abilities, expands your language, your ability. Clearly, I'm not one of the beneficiaries of this as I'm stumbling through trying to explain this. But reading actually helps you grow as an individual, but it also helps you grow as a creative individual, meaning it gives you great ideas. So if you're a dungeon master, read more. Read anything. I don't care what it is. Just read more, and it'll inspire you a lot more. It forces you to use your imagination and visualize the words on the page, which then allows you to recount or to craft your own stories visually through words for players, making them enjoy the experience of playing Dungeons and Dragons all the more. I think it is a net positive, no matter the story or how bad the story is, to continue reading as an adult and forcing yourself to read and forcing yourself to find time to read. It's just so beneficial in so many different ways, and it keeps your mind sharp. I mean, think about how dull my mind is right now, how much duller it would be if I didn't read. I would be a lump of nothing, just flesh sitting on a couch or something. So in any case, thank you guys for tuning into this live review. I always appreciate you. And of course, thank you so much for your interaction in these live episodes. That actually makes this a lot more fun for me. That is it for my review of Dragon's World of Fire by R.A. Salvatore, Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, Keith Baker, and Scott McGough. What did you think of this anthology? Do you think 4 novellas are worth making a single anthology? And finally, after reading all of the dragon-based anthologies, do you feel their existence is justified? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to thank creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. I'd also like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.